This is Ed Driscoll for PJmedia.com, coming to you from the Lido deck of the MS New Amsterdam on board the National Review post-election cruise. And we're talking with Rob Long, who writes a column for the print edition of National Review each week, is one-third of the troika of the flagship podcast at Ricochet.com, and is the executive producer of Sullivan and Son on WTBS. And Rob, what's your take on how this post-election cruise has gone?
It went pretty well, I think. I mean, it's not over yet. We got another day, but it does seem like it I was expecting, depressed, moping, kind of bipolar Republicans alternating between rage and, not getting out of bed. And now people seem pretty upbeat. They seem ready to sort of take a break, start anew, and, try again.
What do you think starting anew is going to entail?
Well, I'm a Republican, so I think that when you have a failure like we did, a systemic failure, system-wide failure for Republicans, like we did on Tuesday, everything is on the table. And I think we need new people, new operatives. Three things. Our brand is dead, our operatives are incompetent, and we live in a dream world. So we need to come out of the dream world. We need to fire the operatives and get new ones. And then I think most importantly, we got to rethink what it means, what it is that we're selling as Republicans, what we want the voters to buy.
So as Tom Wolfe would say, it sort of sounds like Republicans are really starting from zero.
Look, starting from zero is the best place to start because at least you know exactly where you are.
Yeah.
And you know that you need a little bit of everybody. You need a lot of people in America got to vote for us who didn't vote for us before, and they're going to come from all different groups, and we got to appeal to them.
Rob, as somebody with one foot in each camp, how would you describe the interplay between politics and culture?
Well, I don't know. It's a half and half, really. We sort of our side of the aisle has absolutely zero control over the culture. We have Fox News, and that's not culture. That's just news.
Right.
We don't have any colleges. We don't have any universities. We don't have anything, and we got to figure out a way to get the culture back, or figure out a way to leverage what we can do and what we stand for to get part of the culture back. I guess what I mean by this, we spent $1 billion trying to elect a president, and we all failed. The RNC, Koch brothers, Karl Rove, a bunch of people, they did their best. But that model was, let's make some great ads and put them on TV. And that failed.
So how can conservatives, Republicans, the right, libertarians, how can they make inroads into popular culture?
Well, maybe it's not popular culture so much, but it's real culture. So you take $1 billion, you got $1 billion to spend, right? You're not going to waste it. So, but what if instead of spending $1 billion on nonsense, we spent $1 billion building, I don't know, in the cities where we lose, where there are people, voters for us in the cities. We built we're making it up, the Republican English Language and Civics Institute. And if you're an immigrant or a recent immigrant or even an illegal immigrant, we don't really care that much. You give us $1, we'll teach you English. You can stay as long as you like. You can stay all day. We're running 24/7 English classes. You just give us $1. You can stick around and learn English. Well, then that's one way to change the culture, the actual culture. People then associate us with actual practical ways to empower them to do better in a country and to do better for themselves. And they associate the other side with more and more sort of stultifying regulations and economic control. And that would be good for us. That'd be good for our brand.
But is there a trade-off when you control the culture? Pop culture certainly helped Obama win his re-election bid, but NBC's ratings were in rough shape for much of the year. The New York Times business model is in serious trouble. CNN has had record low ratings, and so on.
Well, yeah, look, more people are watching TV than ever before, and they're watching more shows. They're just not watching them on the big networks. So we shouldn't celebrate that too much. One thing we can find out from the culture is, and I've discovered this by sitting here with a bunch of dyed-in-the-wool conservatives. I ask them what they watch on TV, and most of them have said, "Oh, I love that show, Modern Family." And a Modern Family, it's got a regular sort of nuclear family, then a kind of multi-generational family, and then it's got a gay family, gay parents, and they like that show. Americans like that show, so maybe harping on gay marriage is a mistake.
In other words, it doesn't sound like there's an angry mob with pitchforks who are rushing to burn the stage down because there's a show on about gay marriage.
No. Look, Americans are generally tolerant, and if you behave within a, not even a narrow, but a sort of the band of middle-class propriety, we don't care. We want you to live the way you live, and that's a very conservative perspective, and we sometimes get sidetracked, I think, on our side, and a lot of other things that American people say are just not a big concern to them.
Now, you did a Ricochet podcast on board the ship, and you did one on
we
the
did
island
two
of Jamaica?
Yeah, awesome. Well, we have about 24 Ricochet members. Ricochet.com, a fast-growing conversation site. That's what we want. We want people to talk to each other. We don't really want the one-way conversation you have in talk radio, as good as it is, or in all the other sort of really great. PJ Media, so these are great blogs, great websites, but it's not really a place for a lot of conversation. So we're trying to do that. And we had a member in Jamaica who set up a restaurant for us, so we all went and did a podcast there at a restaurant in Jamaica, which was a lot of fun. And we did one late one night down here, and it was great. It was kind of fun to do it in front of an audience and have people come in, and we'd never done that before, but it was a lot of fun.
And you broke some serious news. John Yoo is running for the mayor of Oakland?
Well, John Yoo is a perfect example. I said, John, what should we do? How do we get out of the trouble we're in? And he said, well, Republicans lose the cities. We might want to think about, law and order in the cities, going back to where people really, a lot of our potential voters are, and running the cities properly, the way Rudy Giuliani did. And he said, some Republicans should run for the mayor of Oakland. And John Yoo happens to live very close to Oakland, lives just across the line at Berkeley. So, well, what about you? And he said, I would think about it. And then, of course, we embroidered that into John Yoo running for the mayor of Oakland. But I think he might. Look, I would vote for him.
Hope he's prepared to have the mother of all negative campaigns run against him on a local level.
But on a law and order level, certainly, it would be a national campaign run on conservative themes in a city that's broken down and fallen apart, and a city that has serious crime, drug, gang, education problems. The one piece of advice I gave the Romney campaign, which they did not take, was their headquarters should have been in Detroit. That's where liberalism has failed. Mm-hmm. Those cities are where the Democratic Party has failed. And what better place to go than to where your opponents are failing and say, we can do better?
But do lesser-informed voters make the connection between liberal and leftist policies and failed cities such as Oakland and Detroit?
No, we don't even talk about the cities. No, we don't talk about the cities. We still follow that, that kind of 2004 strategy of divide and conquer, which worked for us in 2004, barely, but worked. And we have to talk about the cities. That's where the people live. Mm-hmm. So if we want to win in California again, that's 55 electoral votes. Or we want to win in Florida, Miami, and those big urban areas. We're not talking about the cities. We're not talking to Americans.
Rob, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that you have a television show that you're working on. How is that going?
Yeah, it's going very well. It's on TBS. It'll be on in the summer, our second season. It's called Sullivan and Son. It's set in a bar, which is, I think, the best, the lucky place to set a show. And
but nobody walks in and yells, Norm!
Nobody walks in and yells, Norm, unless that'll work, in which case I'll do that too. And it seems to be doing well.
And you also have your fortnightly column in the print edition of National Review.
That's right. I do a issue, whatever it is, fortnightly column for the fortnightly National Review. I am coming up on my 20th anniversary. So I've been doing it for 20 years. In January, it'll be 20 years of it. Which, when you think about it, is insane.
And you had Kim Il-sung's Twitter feed. You cracked the code, too.
Yeah, and then Kim Jong-un, the young guy, who... before his dad died, his little moniker was Youth Captain. They would call him the Youth Captain, and so that's what I call him, at Youth Captain.
All right. Well, we've been talking with Rob Long, veteran of stage screen television and the National Review crews here on the MS New Amsterdam. And Rob, thank you for stopping by.
Thanks for having me.
From Rob Long, we move to another member of the Ricochet.com team, and that's the Bard of Minneapolis, James Lileks, who also writes for National Review and Lileks.com. James, how are you doing today?
Fine, you forgot to mention the one entity that actually pays me, the Star-Tribune.
Whoops, we don't want to forget the Minneapolis Star-Tribune.
I love it when people start out with Lileks.com, the hobby, and then work their way eventually to the major newspaper for which I work. How am I? I'm fine, except I've, of course, as is usual for this point in the cruise, have blown out my voice in a night of speeches and talking at the table and bacchanalias at the innumerable bars afterwards. You do nothing but shout after about 8 o'clock on this cruise. You shout to the other side of the table, you shout to the person next to you to be overheard over the din of the... Well, of the Baked Alaska Parade. Now,
we should tell the listeners what happens on the last day or the second to last day of one of these cruises.
I had 3 people who'd never taken a cruise before, and so I warned them, tonight, the appearance of baked Alaska on our menu means that we are in for this interminable ceremony wherein all of these kitchen staff will parade around with baked Alaska as though they invented the damned thing, and we will all be required to pick up our towels and wave them over our heads, which I did lustily the first time ever I was on a cruise, but after about 14 iterations of this. And then, after you've met everybody and applauded everybody and they sing you the song of their people, there is a little pitch for what happens when you get the review, when you are offered the opportunity to grade the crew. And I can repeat this thing by memory. I mean, first of all, good news, the baked Alaska has 0 calories tonight. I've heard this on 3 ships. And then they tell us that there's a scale of 1 to 9 that we're to judge them on. 10, of course, is perfection, and they can never be perfect, they realize. So they've readjusted perfection to mean 9. It's a moral base 9. Or as Jonah Goldberg said, it's the Herman Cain system. It's 9, 9, 9. So they didn't believe me, as a matter of fact. And the baked Alaska came, and there was no escapade, there was no brouhaha, there was no great general parades. And I said, no, it's coming. I know. And I heard the tapping of a mic. And I thought, perhaps I am hallucinating this. Perhaps they've dropped it, and I'm just haunted by the telltale heart sign of a mic being turned. But then it came, and then it happened, and they all looked at me and just say, my God, you're right.
Well, prior to the forced bonhomie of the baked Alaska moment, what has been the mood on the National Review cruise?
People have been happy. People have been having a great time. How can you not? Even though we've been tossed around in the seas and missed a prime destination. We went to Jamaica, which is not exactly the height of anybody's trip.
And we had the lovely view of the cement plant.
Was that a cement plant? I thought it was an abandoned bauxite thing. It's a great place where Batman has the final fight with the Joker. It was one of those. But no, I mean, people enjoy life, so they've enjoyed the cruise. Do they enjoy the political situation? Not so much. But it depends upon whether or not they just see nothing but decay and imminent catastrophe ahead, or whether or not they have some hope that this is not the end of civilization.
Well, and what's been the consensus in terms of rebuilding after the debacle in November?
Well, either nobody really cares what I think, which is wise, and haven't asked, or conversation has just become so tired about these things. I mean, you go to these panels, you hear wise men and women discussing these matters. You immerse yourself in it in your trips around the internet every day. I've been just delighted that everyone's been taking Jim Garrity's advice an awful lot, which is to just leave it alone. Leave it alone and gather your spirits and come back again in 2-3 weeks or 2-3 months or 2-3 years for that matter. And just everybody put a lot into this. It didn't really work out. If the idea that you then want to turn your brain to the matter with equal amounts of fever and enthusiasm, it's a recipe for unhappiness.
So it's just a little too close to the incident to do a proper autopsy, is what you're saying.
Right, let the body congeal a bit. Well, I mean, yes, it was tough. I mean, you lose some, you win some, you lose some, and then you really lose some. And then you think, well, did we really, really lose it? If you look at what Garrity said after the election, 440,000 votes in key counties would have turned it. And if we'd gotten those 440 and it had turned, would we all be walking around the ship here dancing and clicking our heels thinking we had it in the bag? No. All the forces would still be arrayed against us. We would have some reform. It wouldn't be enough to kick in any noticeable way in the next 2 years. People would say that the rude animal spirits of the economy had returned thanks to the groundwork that Obama had laid in the previous 4 years. There would be enough muttering, mewling discontent for Romney to lose the House and 2 years down the road, and then it would be a miserable 2 years of a lame-duck president in his first term. So the ability to look on the dark side of even the victory that you wanted was, I think, is what keeps us sane.
Well, speaking of autopsies, you have a new murder mystery out.
Oh!
A graveyard
My gosh,
special.
What a segue. Yes, I do, and I'm right now reading Walter Mosley's, one of his new novels, just reminding me how many different approaches there are to the mystery novel. There's the lean, character-driven, brilliant noir that Mosley does. And then there's me. What I tried to do when I started this was to get away from a book that I was starting to write. I had in my brain a series that I was going to do, a historical mystery set in the 20s through the 40s, which I'm going to get around to at some point, almost to bring back the Johnny Dollar character, who's in public domain, an old radio figure character that I want to bring back. But I didn't want to do that book then, and I was walking around a ship 2 years ago, going to the Panama Canal, and this book fell into my head, just clattered in. And the more I walked around, and the more I realized what happened and who had done it. And it was the book that I'd been trying to write for so long, a memoir. I hate memoirs, a dull life. But an account of 1980 at the University of Minnesota, during one of the years where I worked as a waiter in an all-night pizza, beer, breakfast joint. which had the academic clientele, which had the hangers-on who drifted out of school and never left the U, which had everybody came to the Rick's. The governor of Minnesota came. David Byrne came. I waited on Prince. I mean, so it was called The Valley, and I wanted to write a story about it. But as my first editor in book said, somebody should die in the first chapter. And so somebody had to die. So I had to figure out what the mystery was. But once I had it, I couldn't wait to start. And I had the whole thing plotted out by the time I left the ship, and I wrote it, finished it 3 months later, and realized it was part of a longer series.
And you had a gentleman named Wussel who comes to the diner.
Wussel indeed. Wussel was a wonderful character who talked like this. And Wussel, he would always, Wendy was his real name, and he would always push up the bridge of his glasses with the back of his hand, and it was very unkempt, and he had bushy eyebrows and a beard, and his pants hung down, and he never looked at you in the eye. He just looked down. He had something. I mean, I don't know if he had Asperger's or if he had touched in some variety, and we always thought that he was just one of the many odd savant simpletons who hung around the U, because he always sat with this little gnomic math savant who was brilliant, never said a word really, and just had an idiot grin all the time, but could calculate pi to the 10,000th digit. And next to another mathematician we called Dimatime, because that's what he left. That's all he ever left for a tip. And he had this goatish aroma and a bum wheel left leg. And so when Dimatime came hitching it in to sit in B8 by himself and order toast and give you a dime, you knew that the social scene was at its peak. Well, and they're all in the book.
In other food-related questions, Twinkie is apparently going...
What?
Twinkie is apparently in serious trouble because they weren't able to negotiate with
Well, I know
unions.
Continental has been in trouble for a long time, but
The Twinkie brand name is in danger.
I find it highly coincidental, don't you, that in the early days of the second term of the Obama administration, a venerable American icon, the Twinkie, goes. If you read Dinesh D'Souza's book, I believe that you will find that his father hated the Twinkie, everything that it stood for. As a matter of fact, he would regard those who were insufficiently communistic in China as Twinkies themselves, yellow on the outside, white on the inside, traitors to the cause. And but his father used the Twinkie metaphor that actually that the capitalist system was like a Twinkie. It may look tasty and delicious, but it was soft and manufactured. And when you stepped on it, the inner cream that was its essence, its ichor, would squirt out. And I think that essentially is what the president is bound to do. A, because he's evil, and B, because he wants to destroy America. And what better symbol than to destroy the Twinkie? I blame Obama.
And in other breaking news, what is the state of German nudism?
Oh, it's a very good question. It's almost as if I'd spoken to you about this before.
I know, well, we had a very complex pre-interview session, so that we hit all the talking points.
On my iPad, I loaded up a bunch of BBC history magazines. I told Andrew Stutterford last night, I said, I'm reading the BBC history magazine. Is that any good? And he said, let my blank face be an indication of my opinion. But it's far more erudite than American history popular magazines. And they do, there's only so much history you can do. And after 100 issues, you got to start going for the little really nooks and cranny stuff. And so it came to be, I was having my breakfast this morning, reading a piece about German nudism in the 20s and 30s, the roots of German nudism. Having never given it any thought or considered its roots, I was not surprised to find that there were just a bunch of really weird, old, cranky guys out there who came up with grand philosophical concepts to justify hanging around without any clothes.
And ironically, this is one of the more benign philosophical concepts that Germany has come up with in the last 150 years.
It was it's part of that Volk stuff. We are going to walk in the woods for 20 miles and we'll all be naked and we'll all be like the Nordics and all the rest of it. And then they would infuse into it whatever they wanted, that this is a way to political sanity, this is a way to moral purity, this is a way to, in one case, to redeem the German people from the Untermensch, the bad races of the Jews and the Africans who had somehow traduced the ideal German physique, with mentalism perhaps. And so they came up with all of these cults. And Goering stamped it out in 1933 because he was a fat F and didn't like the idea of all these good-looking people hanging around in the all together. But eventually there was a German Nazi naturist who just convinced them that no, this actually does coincide quite nicely with nudism, with Nazism. And so Hitler shrugged his shoulders. In 1941 or 1942 they passed a law that said, all right, okay, You don't have to belong to a club to go someplace and take your clothes off. Let's just leave it at that, all right? The law survived the Nazis, and in East and West Germany was still in force, which is why, apparently, there are all these clothing optional days in gyms and swimming pools in Germany. And the article began that there are few things that shock the British tourist in his peregrinations around Germany, but one of them surely must be going into a gym and finding people, stalkers as they throw a medicine ball at one another and juggle the baton. So apparently there's still a lot of it there, and good for them. But I think the line that stuck with me was, this then was the end of the classical German nudist period, the classical period of organized German nudism. And you know, if there's going to be German nudism, you know that it has to be organized German nudism. Right.
We've been talking with James Lileks of National Review.
Who's an entirely disorganized nudist, and I'm going to prove it now by going to the back deck and lying in the sun.
James, thank you for stopping by.
Always a pleasure, Ed.
For our last interview of the day, we're talking with Roman Genn, the cartoonist in residence at National Review, whose illustrations have graced both National Review Online and, in particular, many a National Review cover. And Roman, thanks for stopping by today.
Well, glad to be here.
I've been asking this question of everybody I've spoken with on the cruise, so I might as well keep the streak alive. Roman, what's been your sense of the mood of the cruise?
Everyone's depressed, but and drinking a lot, so I'm surprised nobody fell overboard.
Roman, how do you come up with the ideas for your illustrations? Does the magazine say, okay, we want you to make Obama look like this, or do they simply leave you to have at it?
Well, it's they come up with the idea, and I can't argue with that because they're holding my passport. So I have no choice but to do what they tell me. I'm enslaved by National Review.
How long does it typically take you to draw one of your covers, and what medium do you work in?
I work in watercolors. Takes me about maybe a day to do a small one, and probably a couple of days to do a large one. So depending on how much we have.
But these are done on paper. This isn't you're not using Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop or something like that.
Old style, all handmade.
And then how do you get your illustration into National Review so that it can go up on the cover?
We're not at liberty to discuss the secret method of communication.
Also known as Federal Express?
Also known as Federal Express,
okay.
or right. We communicate by smoke signals.
You have a lot of fun on the comedy nights on the National Review cruise as the king of the one-liners and one-word answers. How did that tradition get started?
Yeah, I think they ran out of the Brits. They're not allowing me to say anything, so I just sit there and wisecrack in the corner because I cannot make large statements for the risk of embarrassing everyone. So I'm reduced to small bits because if they gave me more time, they would not be able to. Now, I'm not getting into it.
Judging by your very slight accent, I'll bet you weren't originally born in America.
It's a speech impediment. I'm really from Fresno.
How did you get to America?
They found me at sea. I was a small child, and they adopted me and enslaved me.
No, seriously. I mean, you came here from the Soviet Union.
Came from the Soviet Union with the help of Huell Hauser of KCT. And Don Pine and Kevin Cody of Easy Reader newspaper, and also had great help from Temple Beth Am Library Minyan in Los Angeles.
What was life like in the final years of the Soviet Union?
Well, a lot of drinking.
Well, that still goes on today. That's the one constant, isn't it?
That is still going on today. Yes, I was there 3 weeks ago and rediscovered that nothing has changed.
Where were you in Russia?
In Moscow. I had an art show in Moscow, yeah.
Now, there's an example of how things have changed dramatically. A conservative cartoonist having an art show in Moscow.
Well, they got more money than conservatives in the United States, so it was an easy choice.
Well, Roman, thank you very much for stopping by today. We'll let you get back to the rest of the cruise. Any final thoughts for the folks listening at PJM?
Yes, keep voting for the ugliest guy. Roman Genn needs work.
Okay. On that note, Roman, we'll let you go. Thank you again.
Good to be here.
And a special thanks to all of the folks I interviewed today on the National Review cruise. For PJmedia.com, this has been Ed Driscoll. Stop by my blog at eddriscoll.com.